everyone. We're here joined by Jan from Albacross. We're super excited to have you on. Thanks. If you want to kind of quickly introduce yourself and what Albacross do, that'd be super cool.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. My name is Jan. I'm a team lead of the outbound team. We call ourselves SDRs because we believe in the revenue team, and I lead it. So we are 5 to 6 to 7 people right now doing classic outbound. And what we do, what we are passionate about is basically the whole field of intent data, so knowing when a customer is ready to buy and helping marketing and revenue leaders on their funnel. Very high level. Very buzzworthy.
I think the selling's so challenging these days. There's so many things. So I guess intent data helps people understand who's on your website, what are they looking at, where they're from, what companies. So instead of just going after everyone, it's kind of filtering the kind of more likely people, I guess, along that line.
Yeah, exactly. The whole, if you listen to the Chris Walkers and as well, the industry right now is really going away from gating content. That was interesting a couple of years ago, but now people buyers are educated, they start their journey by themselves. And that's sort of where we come in. We help, SDR teams, but especially marketers to know, okay, I can spend this amount of money on this account, and that's actually the likelihood that I will bring them in. So yeah, I like outreach, I like cold outreach. We use the product ourselves, but it's way nicer if you know that they're actually looking for a solution right now, so we can actually create meaning. That's what we call it.
Yeah, I like it. And one of the themes we want to touch on today is prospecting and personalization. And before we come on to that, I think your journey has been really interesting, right? I think you started a year and a half ago at Albacross as a SDR. Now you're managing a team.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. How did you start? Why did you get into it? How big was the company? Those journeys are just brilliant to hear.
Yeah. No, and it's pretty classical, for reps nowadays. I think nobody wants to actually be in sales before they start in sales. So same to me. I got my MBA from a management school, top performer there, blah, 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 blah. And then you think, okay, you go into consulting, that's what all the young people do nowadays. But I had a lot of friends in the SaaS industry, at Salesforce, Personio, and they all said, give consulting a shot, but don't forget to apply for, a SaaS company. So I was doing my parallel processes for interviewing for consultancy and interviewing for SaaS. So I got a job offer from Salesforce in Dublin, and I was at the office, and the floor is buzzing. So I really fell in love with that. But then the pandemic hit, and I wasn't really ready to move to Dublin because I like family. I'm very connected to my friends. So I wasn't really ready to do the move. Then I went into consultancy, never started to job. I got fired directly, first in, first out. So I was with nothing. So it's I want to stay in Sweden for now. And I want to get into SaaS. So I just applied for an internship in this company and started, from the ground, low salary, low commission, low whatsoever. And, I'm super obsessed by learning at this stage in the career. I just want to learn as much as possible and then just work hard. And this is sort of how I got into there.
Yeah. And so you started, and I think everyone, you end up in sales because you either have loads of credit card debt or student loans or something. And then when you started, how often were you using, did you know you were using LinkedIn? Were you posting on LinkedIn, or was it kind of all new to you? You had 5 connections, or what was that?
Oh, I think I had 3 posts before, two graduations. So I was now I'm graduating, and the other one was I'm looking for a job. So I knew that it was a platform, and I knew it was sort of powerful. And then I started to come into the SaaS industry, and I got a lot of learning from it. So basically, we are a small startup. We didn't have too much onboarding material. So I just read everything on LinkedIn and sort of self-educated myself. One guy that stood out to me is, of course, Kyle. He has an onboarding guide for being a good rep. So I used all of that, literally copy pasted what he did, and I was successful at that. And at one point, I remembered, yesterday, I booked a meeting with a C-suite and the entire boardroom within a day with a cold email. I was I need to share this. This is so good. probably someone else could use that idea. So I started sharing these ideas and sort of enjoy the process of writing, enjoy documenting, and really like to help other people. That's how I started to post by myself.
Yeah. And that's, there's two things that are interesting there. One is like you self-onboarded yourself, but you were using LinkedIn and finding people, seeing what content there were. So which is, I think this is a post kind of pandemic thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like I don't like, of course I had like great onboarding from my company, right? I really have to point that out. Becca, you have done a fantastic job, but you have all those influencers that were just sharing good content. And I just started to pick and started to implement stuff by myself and share with the team and see if it works for myself, because not everything is applicable, right? You have to always have this critical lens, like reading an article, you know, does this apply to me? How can I use it? How do I adapt this? And I really started to see an effect that I sort of started to think about, like, I also hit my quota. So why don't I share what worked for me?
And I think, exactly that. I think pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, you would almost have an office. So there'd be other SDRs, other salespeople in there, and you could hear other people making cold calls. You could they get a meeting. You know, what email did you send? What did you put on LinkedIn? But all of that's removed from you. So you're kind of sat there in your like home office, bedroom, etc. And you're kind of like, but then you see this great content on LinkedIn, and I've seen you share loads of really good content. I think you used to be a hockey player, right, as well.
Like at the youth level, and I was lucky that I was, you know, in Sweden, so we could still, the sales team still could go to the office, so I still had this. But still, you know, from other people there's always like curiosity is one of the key traits of a successful BDR, right? So you always want to learn more. You sort of get addicted to what tips and tricks. And that's what I got into it. And
what would be interesting now is trying to understand your prospecting journey. So like you've kind of settled in, you've gone into a new role, working backwards from booking a cold meeting, right? How do you start? And I guess you'll talk about some intent data, like picking the right account. But what's your kind of process if you were to like, hey, how would you go about, you know, this week? How would you go about booking a new meeting? What's your kind of process? And it'd be good to go into some details based on that.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, we have already some existing clients, right? So we have an idea, or we know which accounts can be successful with us. So we have this sort of predefined target account list of criteria that they need to have. And then I work in the DACH market, so I know that like network is pretty powerful. So a good one is to go to LinkedIn, find a key decision maker, a champion that you know, and look for all his connections within your ICP, for example, right? So I know Gautam, we have a connection, probably know that you are connected to a lot of other CEOs. So I will probably speak to all of the other CEOs because I know that you could be a good match. So I remember I did this once and this is very successful. So really being picky of the ones that you actually can help with, and saying no to a lot of accounts that say like, oh, they have cool marketing, they are interesting, but I won't get them in, they won't be successful with our product.
So that's interesting. That's a really cool tip there that I think a lot of people don't use enough is going through other people's connections that you're connected with on LinkedIn. You get to see, okay, this person's connected with so-and-so, and like, it takes what, 5 minutes to do, and then you've suddenly got yourself a brand new lead list, and then you kind of know who's appropriate, who's not appropriate, who's going to be a fit, and then I think you mentioned that you qualify out, right? Instead of it's easy for new SDRs to just I'm just gonna go after every single one of these, and then you just, you know, you're wasting 80% of your time because some of them are just not going to be a good fit.
Exactly. So we recently implemented MEDDIC, you know, MEDDIC qualification. So that's like super important, right? The best reps, you know, they are the best qualifiers. The best closers are the best qualifiers because they take out all the ones that they can help with. So yeah, they are like other really good examples, but I really always try to think about like which accounts are interesting, you know, who can we actually help with, and then use this network effect.
And then what do you do there? So you've like, again, I think that's the most important piece, is selecting the right accounts, selecting the right people. And then when you found those people, what forms of outreach do you use? Like email, cold calling, LinkedIn, like social selling? Is there, do you change it per prospect? Do you have a formula?
I mean, if I would have a golden formula, I wouldn't be sitting here, you know, and then I would just do consulting. No, I think right now it's all about the multi-channel approach. You know, you have to use all the channels that you have available. I mean, the reach desk and Syndosos are even an extra right now with gifting. Yep. We are not there yet, but we use email, we use personalized videos, we use the phone, and we use LinkedIn as sort of the major 3 channels right now. And then we're always exploring new stuff. I think that's really important. Then in the specific on how we want to work and being time efficient is the 5x5x5 role. So you take 5 minutes to find 5 key informations about the account and the persona, and then spend 5 minutes on writing a really cool killer email. And once you've done that 5x5x5, you will never need to go back and do other account, because you know that they're hiring, you know what their job descriptions are, you know their traffic, you know their tool stack, and then you have all enough to create value, so to say.
Yeah, I love that. I anything with like a trip 5x5x5 is easy to remember as well. But I think the key point there is, don't spend like hours. You don't need to spend like 5 hours researching a company. You don't need to spend hours researching a prospect. And you've kind of said, hey, 5 minutes on account and prospect. On account, you want to look at their tool stack, maybe if they're hiring. On the prospect, you want to look at a few key things, and you're done, right? You don't need to spend all that time. So and you mentioned one point there, which was tool stack. So how do you so you find their tool stack? What other things do you look for? Because these are all things that help with personalization, if you know what tools they're using. On the persona, are there any certain things you look for on the persona before you reach out to them?
Yeah, I mean, we know, you know, which personas we usually speak to. That's of course important. You know, I can't book you. I mean, there are 2 different approaches. You could go bottom up. You know, you speak maybe to an SDR, get some information, take that information before, and then use this person as an intro to speak to maybe a CMO. Another really cool approach is to go top down. So you call as high up that you're scared. You know, you could even call the board and get an intro to the CEO to speak to the CMO, right? That's very effective as well. I think the general points here is really to get an understanding of the account, get an understanding of who's talkative. You know, if they had just changed jobs, golden, right? They're here for a mission, right? Why did they come into the new role? Probably they need to fix something, right? Or they are known for implementing change. Great, you know. Then if we go into more detail, personalization triggers, hobbies are perfect, you know. So I sort of always have this formula in mind, like a hobby is connected towards a trait, and a trait is connected towards your work, and that means that this trait can be connected to our value prop, right? So if you're an avid runner, you like to push boundaries. As a sales manager, you know that pushing boundary means it's overachieving quota. So how are you making sure that you are overachieving a quota in your job, right?
Yeah, very. I think that's very cool. So it's 2. I think you've taken the depth of that is really interesting. I think you mentioned 2 things there. One was around looking at someone who's recently moved role, because that's easy to find. You're on LinkedIn, been in the current role, whatever, 3-4 months. But it's not just about, hey, great, I see you've moved role. It's taking it to that next level. You've probably been brought into a new role because there's a reason, there's a challenge or current problem. So it's thinking that next step. And then I think you've used the other point of like, again, it can be quite straightforward to find people's interests and hobbies. Like, are they a runner? Do they play sport? Like if they've got any other social interests that you can find. But then it's relating that to the role again. So taking, like, if someone was a hockey player, like if they're a team sport, they're competitive and they're in a sales role, like I said, they're incredibly good. So it's taking it that relating that to something else, I guess, is what you're saying there as well, which is cool.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like once you learn sort of like your key traits of your product, then you always can relate that back, right? Like, so it's also scalable in a sense, but you need to go in with that mindset, because the segue is hard to learn, right?
Yeah. It's something that takes time, right? You can't, especially with new SDRs, you can be like, oh, this is how we do it. But, you know, it takes practice, it takes time. And I think the good thing is just appreciate that you'll probably suck at it for the first like 2-3 months before you start getting good and it becomes a lot easier. So you just, as long as you appreciate it's hard to start with.
Yeah.
One thing that's quite good, and you're now running a team, some metrics, I guess, become a bit more important to you. What type of metrics are you looking at past the, you know, number of activities? Is there anything specific that you feel are important?
Yeah, so I think it's very important to know your number. As a rep, you need to know how many touch points you need to make to book an appointment, right? Is it 50? Is it 60? Is it 100? Or is it 400? You need to know how much you need to put in to hit quota, right? So every of our reps knows, okay, my golden number is X, right? So I can circle back to them after a week. Hey, you are not hitting your number. What's going on? You like just a numbers game in the end then. Yeah. So that's number one. And then calls, you know, there need to be a certain amount of calls that you need to make to hit the target. Like there's nothing more successful or powerful than a rep that can handle the phone. Yeah. It's just the way it is. And it will remain like this for the time like that I want to do.
And I think like I can't remember, I can look it up, but like I think 50% of all meetings are still booked over the phone.
It's more for us.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
And it's intimidating. I remember like having my first sales role, and it's slightly scary, especially if you're in the office, you're making those first few calls, everyone's listening to you. You're embarrassed if you screw it up, if someone's rude to you or hang up. Do you have any advice for like people like who are starting, you know, you're starting to cold call? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, no, I'm the same, you know, like it's nothing that you just have to get used to it. It's like, I think the saying like eating the frog, you know, you have to do the most annoying thing early in the morning. Yeah. I think the best advice is to have perspective on it. Like, you know, it's don't take it personal. You know, if someone's not interested, actually good for you, because you can focus on someone nicer. And just reflect back, you know, I can't even speak to those people. You know, we're still in a post-pandemic situation. I'm still having a job. You know, I can still work. You know, that's pretty cool. Yeah. There are a lot of people that can't do what they want to do. And this SDR role, as tough, it probably needs to be as tough as that, but it sets you up for whatever you want to do afterwards, whether it's customer success, whether it's AE, whether it's, you know, becoming a CEO at one day, but it sets you up for your own thing. And reflecting back, so I start my morning with reflection. You know, I'm like, okay, you know, it's super stressful, but it's cool to be stressed, no? Yeah. Because I can be stressed. And then you get sort of another idea on how to approach this. It just becomes a small thing.
Appreciate. I don't think people like, sales is tough, right? Cold calling, rejection. 90% of the time, a sales job is kind of doing a manual task, getting rejected. You know, there'll be lots of posts on LinkedIn. This is great. But, you know, the reality is that like it's tough. 8-9 hours every single day, finding people, finding accounts, messaging them. You know, you're typically only booking like one meeting every 2 days, 3, or whatever it is. Yeah. So I think just being appreciated, really like disconnecting, I think you used as well, like, you know, disconnecting from like what you're doing to your role. But I think the first point you mentioned was interesting. Like, I don't see enough salespeople doing this. Is having your metrics, having your numbers. How many calls do I need to make to book a meeting? How many emails do I need to send? How many sequences or cadences or whatever that is? As a salesperson, if you don't know that, you know, you're just going to start doing random blind work all the time as well. What are the other kind of things that you see that, you know, you've been doing this for a while now, you've hired people. What are the best SDRs across like any company that you see doing, like anyone across like LinkedIn or social? What do you think are the top kind of traits?
Interesting. I asked this like every person that I've been interviewing the last time, and there are like 3 to 5 things that really stick out and that I can agree upon. First one is like curiosity. You need to be super curious. Like you can't train that you're interested in someone else, because that will come across as fake. You need to be super curious. Like, okay, cool. Like, why did you start that company? Or like, why are you doing this interview series? And that's really interesting. Tell me more about it. Like, this has to be within you. You either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
You have to be tenacious. Like, you have to deal with rejection. If you're actually doing a 90% good, then it's really good. You should be at 98, because then you're focusing on the right things, but you have to be fine with that. Third one is passion. Like, if you're not passionate about your role, if you're not passionate about the product that you sell, people hear that, they realize it on the phone. If you're not smiling when you cold call, you can hear stuff like that. So these are the major things. I would add 2, and they can be included in that. I would add no excuses. The best reps out there, no matter how stressed they are, no matter how much things to do, they have no excuses. They have a no excuse policy. I'm gonna hit my quota. It's like summer, doesn't matter. I'm gonna hit it. And then, especially in a startup environment, the last one is optimism. And if someone is coming into the office with a big smile versus grumpy on a Monday morning, it's all the difference. All the difference, right?
No, I love that. Especially no excuses, right? I had an old boss. It was like excuses or results, pick one. That whole, and it's true, right? You're accountable for your own activity, what you do. Your results don't even have to be there, right? There's going to be weeks, months you don't hit target, right? That just happens. But you should be looking for that consistency. And the optimism. Sales is a job where, appreciate it. I love that cold call with a smile. Because people hear it. I think there's like, I know a lot of people stand up whilst making cold calls because it projects their voice a lot more. Tenacity, curiosity. The curiosity piece is huge. I've seen the difference between high-performing salespeople and lower performing. And the high-performing will be naturally inquisitive. They're asking questions because they're interested themselves. They're not asking for their job. They're asking because they genuinely want to know, how do you do that? What is your process? Interesting. On the flip side, what are you seeing? Like, have you seen, not necessarily your organization, but other organizations, other companies?
We're not perfect, and nobody's perfect.
But what are the like mistakes you see, the common mistakes people are making these days?
First one is like not showing their research. They are like hiding behind a template. And then you go like, okay, why should I even open this? So it goes back to adding value. Like, you need to add enough value and show enough expertise that I am willing to take a call. If people, now I get prospected, and it's really fun because I'm sitting on the other side of the boat now, and people go in for the call and in the first note and speak only about themselves. And I'm like, man, I don't care about you. I don't know you. So, it's all about they have to make it about the prospect, and they have to earn my interest with value. I'm super active on LinkedIn. Like, if you're not looking at what I'm doing, then I'm sorry, then you didn't do a proper research or you haven't shown it. And so we share a lot of like examples where we don't bash them, but we have a channel where we say like, listen, what would you have improved with that message because it didn't resonate with me? So we share this, of course, anonymous in our Slack as well.
But no, I agree. I think, and you've kind of touched on it already in this conversation, which is, that 5 by 5 by 5. If you carry out the research on the account, the prospect, you should have some good information. I mean, there's this like saying, it's a silly word, it's called WIFM, which stands for WIFFM or something, which is what's in it for me. So if you think WIFM, what's in it for me? And if you're writing a mail to a prospect or an invite or a video, you've got to think, what's in it for them? Why would they listen to this call? What's your call to action? What value have you done? If you're not thinking about the prospect, you've immediately failed.
Yeah. And it's super hard, right? Because you know your product in and out, and you as a salesperson, you want to speak about it, but you have to understand that they don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
You know, once I was in a call and the expectations were completely wrong. They started to pitch us, and I thought I could pitch them. That was, you know, complete polar opposite. I was like, hey, you know, this was our demo, you know, or our quality call. So that was something that I've been thinking about before.
And like, final question from here, just to understand, I know one big thing that you've done, which is huge, is how active you are on LinkedIn. You regularly post, it's engaging content. It's also, for a new SDR, a lot of people, it's quite intimidating to like start posting, you're putting yourself out there. LinkedIn is changing to what it used to be. It's becoming much more sharing. And what, like, you're incredibly active and great at this. What do you, like, if you're a brand new SDR, you're not regularly posting on LinkedIn, what advice would you give to kind of get started with that process?
Yeah, I spoke to Devin Reed about this from Gong, actually, head of content there. And first thing you have to understand is you think that a lot of people will see it, but reality is they don't. They just don't. You know, like most of the content is not even clicked upon or opened. So I think that's a big fear that you have in the beginning. It's like, oh, now I start to share, now the entire world sees it. To be honest, no, they won't. You know, they won't even remember your name. So this is a big blocker that you have to get out of your head. Then the second one is like, share stuff that have two things in common with you: experience and expertise. Like, what is a situation that you have solved and mastered, and which one like solved and mastered, you know? So how did I book that call? You know, if you have booked this call in a specific way, then it's, you know, something you should share, in my opinion. And then the third one is consistency. You know, I have a goal to post at least one time a week, and I've doing this for myself. You know, I want to put out one experience, one success every week, and that's my motivation. So that's what I want to share.
No, that's good. Yeah, I think there's 3 points. Like, don't worry about like thinking everyone's going to see your post. Probably like 5 people are going to see it. There's thousands of other things. There are multi-social platforms. So don't like get caught up in what you share. The second bit is around share experiences, share what you believe is useful for your persona. Like, I think, again, we both like engage with salespeople, but people who are selling tech tools to technical people, like what's valuable to them, and then be consistent as well.
I think like on the second point is where also for yourself, you know, like I'm not necessarily like selling to SDRs, and that's why it's like share SDR stuff. I'm just, you know, this is what I'm experienced at, and this is where I have expertise. So I want to add genuine value to my network. You know, if I would be selling to CTOs, I would share the same stuff. But it's about yourself as a brand, you know, or as a person. You want to add genuine value, and that's where I have value. Probably for the SDRs in the company that I'm prospecting, I'm adding value. So I have maybe some internal champions there that could help, right? But I think you have to get the thought of a way that, you know, you start posting, and then meetings with your key persona will come flying in. Dream scenario, but I don't think that will happen.
I know, it's really interesting because I hadn't even thought of that, right? Because I think I'm kind of in the mindset, maybe you should be sharing content that's only relevant with your persona, but actually you bring up a really good point. Like, you should be sharing experiences that you're an expert in, that you're like, and, you know, this is your day-to-day job. You're spending whatever, 40, 50 hours a week doing this. So
that's the way I'm thinking about it. Like, and then, you know, you can like share a relevant article in between for your key persona, but then it will come across as more knowledgeable. But if you start to give tips to a CEO, then you will be like, man, you're 25, like, what do you know about this? But if I come across and say like, listen, this is how you can get into DACH, and these are the 3 things that you should write.
Yeah,
that's valuable to you, right? So
I saw one of your, I think you mentioned, I was looking through some of your posts. I think one of your posts had like, is it like 200,000 views or impressions or something? And what was that? I think that was, it came back to one of your points. It was related to your experience, from where some tips and advice. So it shows that this is what people are interested in, and they want to know, and you have an experience and a point of view that maybe other people don't have, and people are interested to hear about that.
Yeah. And then they decide, you know, if it's interesting or not, if it's helpful or not. But, you know, the things that I share is like, I booked a meeting with that, so I can share it, right? Yeah. That's success in an SDR world, you know, or I overcame an objection, or I increased my open rate. So these are the things that I'm going to share just because I'm an expert in it.
Yeah.
And, you know, now that I interview a lot of CMOs, maybe I can start sharing, you know, stuff about that as well.
Amazing. Yeah. And thank you so much, man. That was so good. I think in terms of like the data, how you go about it, the social side of things, the research and 5x5, there's so much great stuff you're doing in the progression. I'm excited to see what the next few years hold. So appreciate your time, Jan, and thank you for speaking to us.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you. I love those projects. I think you have, exciting stuff ahead. And yeah, really pleasure speaking to you. And I don't know if it was helpful. I hope so. And if not,
definitely.
At least we both had fun.
Yeah.